A 9-pound white Persian cat that refused to eat from a single bowl in his new home, a 24-year-old woman who tried everything for 11 straight days, and what happened on the morning of day 12 when she accidentally set her breakfast table with her grandmother's silver flatware would eventually send her on a 200-mile drive to a small antique shop in Eugene, Oregon to buy back a single Victorian baby spoon for $340, because some cats do not forget the hand that fed them. Megan Park was 24 years old, a junior paralegal at a mid-sized law firm in downtown Portland, Oregon, and she had moved to the city in January from Boise. She lived in a small studio apartment above a Vietnamese bakery on Belmont Street. She did not know a single person within 200 miles. She ate dinner over the kitchen sink most nights, standing up, scrolling her phone, listening to the upstairs neighbor's footsteps. She wasn't lonely exactly, she was just new. The kind of new where you stop introducing yourself to people because you're tired of explaining yourself in 30 seconds or less. It was a cold Sunday in March when Megan walked into the Burlingame flea market at 9:13 a.m. She wasn't looking for anything in particular, just trying to fill the kind of Sunday that would otherwise eat her alive. At booth number 43, an old man in a heavy gray cardigan was sitting on a folding chair behind a card table. On the table were 3 framed black and white wedding photos, a strand of pearls in a small velvet pouch, a hand-stitched wedding dress in a clear plastic bag, a single silver candlestick, and a worn paperback Bible with the spine cracked in half. Behind him on the ground was a wire crate. Inside the crate was a 9-pound, long-haired white Persian cat with one bright blue eye, one paler blue eye, an aristocratic flat face, and an expression that suggested he found the entire arrangement personally insulting. His name was Reginald. The old man's name was Harold. Harold's wife, Margaret, had passed away in February at the age of 79. They had no children. Harold was moving the next month into an assisted living facility on the east side that did not allow cats. Reginald had been Margaret's cat for 14 years. Harold had brought him to the flea market because he didn't know what else to do. He could not surrender a cat that had slept on his wife's chest every night of her last decade. Megan signed nothing, she paid nothing. Harold simply lifted the carrier into her arms, kissed Reginald's fluffy white forehead, and walked back to his booth without turning around. The first 11 days were a slow, quiet disaster. Reginald would not eat. Not the wet food the vet recommended, not the dry food Margaret had apparently used, not even the small chunks of poached salmon Megan made by hand on day 6 in a clean white ceramic bowl. He drank water sparingly, he used his litter box, he sat on the windowsill above the Vietnamese exhaust vent and watched the street like a 9-pound aristocrat watching a peasant procession. The vet on Hawthorne Boulevard listened to his chest, looked at his teeth, and said something Megan would think about a lot later. He is physically fine, he is just refusing. Some cats are picky, some cats are loyal, sometimes those look exactly the same. I see you've watched this far but still haven't subscribed. That stings a little. Stories like Reginald's deserve to be seen. Hit subscribe. You'll want to see what comes next. By the morning of day 12, Megan was tired and a little scared. She had lost a quarter of a pound. She decided that for once, she would set the table properly for herself instead of eating over the sink. She took down the small wooden box on the top of her bookshelf that contained the only inheritance she had received from her grandmother, who had died when Megan was 19. Inside the box were 6 pieces of antique silver flatware, a butter knife, 2 dinner forks, a serving spoon, and 2 small silver dessert spoons with a delicate rose pattern on the handle. Megan poured herself a cup of chamomile tea, sat down at her tiny 2-seat kitchen table, and stirred her tea with one of the dessert spoons. Then she set the spoon down on the saucer and reached for a piece of toast. Reginald, who had been sitting on the windowsill 10 feet away, leapt off the sill, crossed the apartment in 4 silent strides, jumped onto the kitchen table, took the silver dessert spoon delicately between his teeth, and carried it across the apartment to his food bowl. He set the spoon down inside the empty bowl. He then turned around, walked over to Megan's chair, and stared at her with both blue eyes until she put down her toast. Megan tested it. She put a tiny scoop of wet food on a cheap stainless steel teaspoon and set it down on the floor. Reginald sniffed it, walked away. She put the same scoop of food on her grandmother's silver dessert spoon. Reginald walked back, lowered his head with the dignity of a small bishop, and began to eat. By the end of the morning, he had eaten 3 full meals, all of them off silver, none of them off anything else. Meghan called Harold that afternoon. The phone went silent for almost a full minute when she explained. Then Harold made a sound that was halfway between a laugh and a sob. Margaret, he said, had owned a small Victorian sterling baby spoon that her grandmother had received as a christening gift in 1929. Margaret had fed Reginald every single meal off that spoon for 14 years. Harold had thought it was a quirky habit. He hadn't known it was the actual spoon that mattered. If you're starting to wish you had been there for the drive Meghan was about to take, you're not the only one. Meghan asked if Harold still had the spoon. He said it had sold at the estate sale on the 3rd weekend of February. He didn't know to whom. Over the next 3 weeks, on her lunch breaks and her evenings, Meghan worked through the estate sale records, the auction company emails, and an antique dealer in Beaverton who had bought a small lot from Margaret's estate. The trail ended at a shop called Granger's Antiques on East 7th in Eugene, Oregon. On a Saturday in April, Meghan drove 2 hours south on I-5, found the shop, and asked the woman behind the counter if she had a Victorian sterling baby spoon, rose pattern, weighted handle. The woman pulled it out of a small velvet box on the back shelf and showed Meghan the price tag, $340. Then she showed Meghan a small handwritten index card pinned to the back of the box. Margaret Vance, Portland, sterling rose pattern, fed her cat with this every day for 14 years. That night, in her studio apartment above the Vietnamese bakery, Meghan placed a small scoop of wet salmon onto the bowl of Margaret's silver baby spoon and set it inside Reginald's. He approached slowly. He sniffed the spoon once, and then he made the first sound Meghan had heard from him in any of the 12 days she had owned him, a long, low, full-bodied purr. He ate every bite, and when he was finished, for the first time, he climbed into Meghan's lap and stayed there. Today, Reginald is 14. Meghan is 25. He eats from any of her silver spoons happily, including her grandmother's rose-patterned dessert spoons, which is now their everyday flatware. Margaret's Victorian sterling baby spoon sits in a small wooden frame on the kitchen counter, polished but no longer used. Harold takes the bus over once a month from his assisted living facility, and Meghan makes him tea. Reginald spends those visits asleep on Harold's lap. The vet had said it could be picky, it could be loyal. It turned out it could be both. Reginald wasn't refusing food, he was waiting to find out if anyone in this new house remembered that Margaret loved him. He just needed to know somebody knew before he was willing to let anyone else feed him. Was Reginald being picky, or was he being loyal? Should we honor what they remember or teach them to forget? Tell me in the comments.